going to move this over, if y'all don't mind. I want to give an honor to God, first and foremost.
Yes.
Who is absolutely ahead of my life.
Amen.
Who has shown me things I didn't realize about myself and showed me how I should improve and could improve and is able to do all things through Him.
Yes.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus. Through Him we can do all things.
Amen.
I've learned that sometimes we don't think we can make it, but He shows us that if we just persevere and keep our mind on Him and keep our heart and sights on Him, then He'll bring us out no matter what it is. If we rely on Him 100%, the valley might seem long and the struggle might be hard, but at the end result, He'll bring us out. And the end result will be that we'll be closer to Him and stronger in Him. So we just need to work towards being like Christ.
Yes. Amen.
And I want to give honor to the pastor, who's an awesome leader and shepherd of the church.
Amen.
The associates. Yes, ma'am. And the church and all those wonderful members here. You all are jewels. And the Lord knows where you need to be at. And I needed a church home where people are very sweet and welcoming, and I love y'all. So what I thought I was, my word is forgiveness. But to get there, I thought to help everybody get on one page, I'd go over the chapter a little bit.
Amen.
So we'll all be able to appreciate everybody's word and be able to celebrate Christ's sacrifice. So just bear with me for a second.
Amen.
I'm just going to start at the top of Luke chapter 23 and verse 1, and my verse is 34, so I'll just read it quickly. And in the beginning it says, "Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate." Him, they're talking about Christ. Before Pilate. Prior to this, they were trying to accuse Jesus of a variety of things and took him to court and for a variety of reasons to try and get him killed and crucified. But those were unsuccessful, so they brought him to Pilate because Pilate was head of the taxation. So they figured if they couldn't get Jesus one way, they'd make accusations and try and get the head of the taxing department, which is what they grouped together and called Caesar, get him to be angry with Jesus and get him to be crucified in that route. So they brought him to Pilate and accused him of saying that mislead things about our nation and forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar, which means the taxes to the government, to them, ultimately to Pilate, and saying that he himself was Christ the King, saying Jesus said that he himself was Christ the King, and that would not be a good thing because then they would say that Jesus was putting himself above the others. So they're making those two accusations. Of course, Jesus never did either of those. Now, are you the King of the Jews? And he answered him, this is Jesus talking now, "You have said so." Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, "I found no guilt in this man," but they were urgent, the crowd was urgent, saying, "He stirs up the people, teaching throughout Judea and Galilee, even to this place." When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And they answered and said he belonged to King Herod's jurisdiction. So then he said, he sent him over to Herod, who happened to be visiting Jerusalem at the time. When King Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad to see him because he had heard of all the miracles that he had been doing and had desired to see him because he had heard about him. He was hoping to see him and see all the signs that he had done. And he wanted to see the signs he had done just to be nosy, actually, because he was curious as to what Jesus could do. He had heard of all the healings and miracles that Jesus had performed, so he wanted to see them for himself. So he questioned him at length. Jesus is talking about, questioned Jesus at length, and Jesus did not answer because Jesus wasn't going to show miracles just because he wanted to see it. He was willing to heal the sick if they needed to, but he wasn't going to make a spectacle of himself and demonstrate his powers just because the king wanted to see it, just because. He wasn't going to be a topic of conversation and be the center of attraction because the king demanded. So Jesus didn't say anything, he just stood still. And what that says to us, just as a side point, sometimes we just need to stand still and not talk. We just need to stand on what's right. And sometimes silence is golden, truly. Because sometimes when we talk, I'm sorry, this is inside. Sometimes when we talk, we get ourselves in worse trouble. So if we would just meditate on the Lord
Amen.
and let Him guide our words
Yes.
and have our words be seasoned with grace, then
Yes.
we'd be better off. So Jesus
Amen.
remained silent. And the chief priests and scribes stood by vehemently and accused him further. And Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. Now, Herod also knew about John the Baptist, so he knew a whole lot about Jesus. And you know, when people know you, they're able to do digs and
Yes.
accuse you harder
Yes.
and make further, really hard accusations and make you feel worse. So he was really able to torture Jesus. So when he wasn't able to get through, and Herod encouraged the soldiers to do the same thing. So he put a nice cloth, a coat of decorative colors on Jesus to further mock him as King of the Jews. It wasn't a gift, it was to mock him as king. So he sent him back to Pilate in that manner. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other because they hadn't been enemies. So it's amazing how enemies can become friends when they both hate someone else.
Yes.
So that's how they became friends. Now Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people and said to them, "You brought me this man who was misleading the people, and after examining him before you, behold, I did not find any guilt with this man. Neither did Herod, which is why he sent him back to me. I will therefore just punish him." And he was only going to do that to appease the crowd, not that Jesus did anything wrong to warrant punishment either. But he said, "I will punish him and just let him go." But they cried out louder, "Away with this man," and released Barabbas instead, a man who had been thrown into prison for rebellion and murder, known to be rebellious and murder. But Pilate addressed him once more, desiring to release Jesus because he didn't think that he deserved to be killed. But the crowd cried out again, third time. Now Pilate was concerned there was going to be a rebellion, and he was concerned for his safety and the little area, so he gave in. And they were urgently demanding, the crowd I'm talking about, to crucify Jesus, so they did. They released him. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted and released the man that had been thrown into prison, released him on that ceremonial day. And Jesus was handed over to their will. And as they led him away, they seized Simon, who they thought at the time was a friend of Jesus, to carry the cross to follow behind Jesus. Now he had Simon carry the cross not to be kind, but he carried the cross because they didn't want Jesus to hurt himself. Isn't that pitiful? They didn't want Jesus to hurt himself on the way to the crucifixion, so they had Simon carry the cross on his behalf. And then there's a whole crowd that followed, to taunt him, to torture him, to mock him, to make fun of him, to beat him also. And there were some who were mourners and felt bad for Jesus and cried and cried and cried. But Jesus turned to them. Even in his pain and torture, Jesus turned to them and told the daughters and the women, "Don't weep for me. You should weep for yourselves. Weep for yourselves and the children that you're going to have, because calamity times are going to come. Troubled times are going to come after was what he was trying to say to them. So after Jesus was going to be crucified, they would anticipate that there's going to be trouble and tremendous times, hard times down the road. So he said, "Don't weep for me, you should weep for yourselves," really. Then they will begin to say, "Mountains will fall on us and cover us," meaning that they would wish to die. There were also two other criminals that were led to be put to death too. And when they came to the place called Skull, the place called Skull was a place for crucifixion, which was a humiliating place to be crucified. Would be one criminal on the right and one criminal on the left. And despite all that, now I'm going to get to my point. Now that I've summed it up. Now throughout all that, recall that Jesus was falsely accused. And then you remember, I'm sure that you've all been falsely accused of things. And have been abused and been bullied, just like he was in the presence of Herod and Pilate and everybody else. He was bullied, beaten, spat on, and humiliated. But through all of that, he maintained his composure, he maintained his humility, he maintained his dignity, and he maintained his selflessness. And what he could have done, but he didn't do, when he was getting beaten, he could have called up to heaven and called on the fire and brimstone, so that the Lord would come down and punish all those who sought to torture him, but he didn't. And he did that all for our sake. And he was compassionate to the end. He was merciful because he thought about us and how he could try and help us, and he forgave us. Now my verse was forgiveness. How he should, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And he said those words, if you can envision this, when he was being nailed to the cross. Back in the day when they nailed him to the cross, they would put him down on the cross will be on the ground, be nailed down. I vision Jesus laying down on the cross with his eyes looking to heaven.
Yes.
His eyes looking to heaven, to Christ. And while the nails were being pounded in his hand, he would say, Father, he would cry out in his heart, Father, forgive those because they know not what they do.
Jesus.
And then even in his minute of misery, even in his moment of torture and pain and agony, he saw fit to do a transgression prayer for us, so that we could reach heaven. So that we could reach heaven. So they say that his victory could have been coming down off the cross, but you know what? His victory for us was staying on the cross.
Amen.
Because that's how we got connected. That's how he was a sacrificial lamb. I look at the sacrifices that's given in the Bible. Jesus, all the way to the road to the cross, he was the sacrificial lamb being led. He was sacrificial lamb with pure blood, pure heart. So he had his outstretched hands. That's why when we praise Lord, we need to have our hands outstretched hands, so we can surrender and show our willingness to do everything we can for the sake of Christ. So the forgiveness, which is wiping out everything, and we all need to learn that. Forgiveness isn't just not thinking about it at the time and talking to the other person. Forgiveness means wiping it out altogether. That's the definition of forgiveness. It's not just ignoring what you did to me in the past. It means not remembering it, not bringing it up. If you have an argument with me, not remembering it and throwing it in my face, it's forgetting it altogether. So that's why it says, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So that the Lord will not remember at all. And that's how we need to be with our, this is talking to me. Somebody said to me, you know what? Everybody really needs to do the same thing, including me. We need to learn how to forgive one another, because that's what's going to be required. We need to forgive to the point where we forget all together. So we're supposed to forgive 70 times 7, right? Right.
Amen.
So we need to forgive and forgive and forgive, not just ignore.
Right.
But forgive to the point where I can look at you and hold no grudge at all.
Right.
Amen.
I'm sorry.
Amen. Hallelujah. Glory. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you.